everyone. Well, it is time. It's time to talk about Gilmore Girls, A Year in the Life. Hi, it's Amanda from the future. If you do not want to be spoiled, don't watch the video. Just don't watch any of it. Go and watch Gilmore Girls, the revival, and come back here and then you can watch it. Otherwise, bye-bye. I'm sure most of you guys already know that I'm a huge fan of the show, and it is definitely one of my favorites, if not my favorite TV show of all time. I was watching Rosanna's video about nostalgia the other day, and she talks about how nostalgia plays a big part in why we like Gilmore Girls, especially the revival. And that's definitely true, because there are a lot of kind of nostalgic moments in the revival that reflect on the original and feel familiar and comforting, like the show we always knew and loved. But there are a lot of glaring problems with the revival, and a lot of people have already talked about this, so I'm kind of just repeating what other people have said here. But basically, there is body shaming that is just not okay, and racial stereotypes, and immense privilege in certain main characters, and the fact that Rory is basically unlikable, which is kind of a new concept for me, but thinking more about it, it's totally true. She is unlikable in the revival, and I always kind of considered her one of my favorite characters of all time. And a lot of that has to do with how Rory is a big reader. And watching the revival was so weird because she never reads a single book in any of the 4 episodes. In summer, at one point, she does have a copy of Anna Karenina on her lap, but she never reads it. And the shelves in her room are almost empty of books. It looks like there's random textbooks lying around, and there is a shelf that has some books on it, but most of the shelves just have little trinkets and things on them. So it felt very different for me. And I got to thinking that maybe that's because all of her books are in boxes in 5 different states and 2 different countries. And maybe because she's not in school anymore, she doesn't have to read as much for assignments, but I don't really want to make excuses for why she's reading less. And my other big issue, aside from everything that I've already mentioned, is that certain characters are just not in the show enough. And that I'm thinking of 2 main characters. The first one is Suki, who is only in 1 scene in the last episode, and I know there were scheduling issues and drama around it that I don't really know the full extent of, but I really wish that she could have been a bigger presence. And then the other one, obviously, is Jess. You guys know that I'm a huge Jess fan, and I put up an entire video just talking about why I think Jess is the right guy for her. And I think it's an unlisted video that's linked in one of my other Gilmore Girls videos, so you can go find it if you want to. But I just think Jess was not in it enough, and Logan was in it too much. And I mean, in the end, I would prefer that she not be adulterous with Jess, and that if she were, it would be Logan, and therefore Logan be the one to eventually end things with. And that one moment towards the end of fall, when Jess is leaving Lorelai's house and stares longingly through the window at Rory, that moment just like gives me life. And it is literally my new desktop background, because I just think Jess is the right one. And I know it's not about what guy she ends up with, and that's not like the whole point of the show. And I know Jess is the one who is kind of always just cheering Rory on for exactly who she is and to find whatever she wants. And that is part of why I like Jess so much, because he supports her that way and understands her that way, and I think therefore is the best match for her. Obviously. And I have read the theory that might not be a theory, it might just be fact, that basically Jess is meant to be Rory's Luke and Logan is meant to be Rory's Christopher. And it just like totally makes sense and gives me hope for their future. And I don't know if there will be more episodes. I don't know if I want there to be more episodes. My first thought at the end was, well, now they have to make more. But more episodes just gives them more chance to mess things up. And I do like the symmetry of the ending with the ages that they are, and the age Rory is matching the age Lorelai was in the very first episode. And I liked the symmetry of the very first shot of the two of them in the gazebo in winter, and the very last shot of them in the gazebo in fall, kind of mirroring the scenes of them looking through the window in the diner in the first episode of the original series and the very last episode in the original series. So those are kind of just the biggest thoughts that I have about the show, and I'm sure I'm leaving important things out. But essentially, because there are so many other great reviews and discussions of the show out there already, I kind of thought I would do something a little different for the rest of the video and basically just read you my notes that I took during each episode. And I thought it was really interesting that I barely took any notes for spring and took a ton of notes for fall. So without further ado, here are my thoughts on Gilmore Girls: A Year in the Life. So for winter, in the scene where Lorelai says she smells snow, my first thought was, you're literally surrounded by snow. It's on the ground already. That's why you smell snow. And also, yes, because it's snowing. But there's already snow on the ground. Come on. I thought the first Troubadour song kind of went on for a long time, but I was thinking that maybe that's because it was meant to replace the function of the intro song. I like that Paul is forgettable because we didn't know about him because so many years have passed without any episodes. So if we don't know about him and we don't know he exists, maybe it's appropriate that everyone else doesn't know he exists, because we're not going to take him seriously if we didn't see the build-up of their entire relationship. And isn't Cotton the anniversary for marriage? And they've only been dating for 2 years, so I thought that was kind of weird. Stress tap dance. I want to learn how to stress tap dance now. There are a lot of really familiar scenes in this, and one that really stood out was when someone leaves Luke's diner, walks past the window and exits the scene, and then a moment pauses and they run back across the window into the diner to do whatever they forgot to do. It felt very classic Gilmore Girls. I did not cry at the funeral like I thought I would, but I think that's because it wasn't really filmed. It was just kind of an overview montage thing. River freaking Song. Oh my gosh. I love River Song in Doctor Who, and I know not everybody likes her character, but I really do, so I was excited to see that actress playing Naomi Shropshire. Logan. When he comes on scene, the first thought I had was WTF. Like, I literally turned and looked at my friend who I was watching it with and said, WTF. But honestly, in the end, I wasn't really that surprised with her behavior because of her history with Dean when Dean was married, and her being the one to initiate a casual relationship with Logan in the first place. So not honorable, but not totally surprising. I think the fake Wi-Fi passwords is very Luke, and I thought that was funny. And I thought it was odd when Kirk and Rory didn't follow up with the extension cord thing. Like, he asked her to ask Lane for an extension cord, but then he just leaves without doing anything about it. And then at the very end of the episode of Winter, Lorelai doesn't drink her glog and forgets it and just leaves. And I thought that was weird, but also kind of familiar, because I think they do that a lot in the original show, where they order food, take one bite, and then they have to dash off somewhere, and they talk about eating a lot, but they don't actually eat a ton of food on the show. And I know part of that has to do with being actors and not wanting to actually eat food 20 takes in a row. So for spring, my thoughts were small and limited. I thought it was confusing when Lorelai was talking about Suki being at home during the food festival when she was talking to Jackson, and it sounded like she was back, but then she wasn't in the episodes at all, and I thought she was off hunting mushrooms and eating soil or whatever. And then in the therapy session when Emily brought up how Lorelai left and abandoned her and whatever, I thought that just kind of was really repetitive, and we'd already crossed that in the original series, and I wasn't sure why she was bringing that up yet again, but perhaps it was just part of her manipulative behavior. And then we also never found out about the letter that Emily said Lorelai wrote, and she insisted she didn't, and I swore it was going to come up later, but it never did, and now I'm like, what the heck was that letter? And then when Rory is on the phone with Logan and calls Paris's daughter the baby, that child is like 3 years old or something, and clearly not a baby. So that was really weird, and I didn't understand why she used that phrase, but whatever. And now on to Summer, which a lot of people say is their least favorite episode, and I think I would have to agree. Body shaming at the pool, seriously, like, not cool. Like, they call out a skinny girl for wearing a swimsuit at the pool, which is like, come on, it's a swimsuit. And then Claudia, the therapist, when she was auditioning for the musical, seemed like a totally different person. Like, obviously the same character and same actress, but just a totally different person. So I think maybe because this was Dan's episode, he just kind of wrote her as a different type of person. Finally, Jess! Like, finally! Is that a wallet in his back pocket? Because it should be a book. It's usually a book, but it does not look like a book. And I liked the second half of Summer much more than the first half, because you get the whole thing with the gravesite and the book and the drama between Lorelai and Rory, and you get her being inspired to go off and do wild. And on to fall. I keep thinking I see Suki. There are just characters that look like Suki, and I don't know if they did that on purpose to tease us or confuse us, or if it's just a coincidence, but one of those hikers looked so much like Suki. I thought the cameos from Lauren Graham's two co-stars from Parenthood was really funny, and like, one was her TV show love interest and one is her real life love interest, and I love Parenthood and I miss it so much. The next thought that I wrote down, I don't remember what context, but just Jess. I love Jess, so just apply that to any scene he is in and it'll be accurate. When Luke and Lorelai are sniping, they obviously just need a spatula, and it'll fix everything. Jess's coat pockets are big enough for a book, but yet there is not a book in them. Does Trader Joe's actually sell Franzia? I was curious how much the lead up to the Life and Death Brigade was real, because I couldn't tell if it was like a dream sequence or not, and I thought some of the effects were a little out there for being actually doable, but who knows. I did actually really like their part. I thought it was really fun and added just a lot of fun to that episode, but I was still like, ugh, more Logan. Just do it with those three other guys. Leave Logan out of it. And I had a thought that Logan is probably in these episodes the most because he was the most recent guy in the original, but who knows. And when Rory says that she is never bored with Logan, I was thinking maybe that plays into why she is with Logan, because he's unforgettable and Paul is very forgettable. And I can definitely see how Logan might play a part of how she flies so often to London. Either him, her father, or her grandma, or money from her grandpa might have something to do with how she just jaunts back and forth, but yet has no underwear and lost her wallet and is broke. I don't think it's really all that weird about Logan being part of a dynastic plan and it kind of sounding like an arranged marriage, because part of the only reason why the Huntsbergers liked Rory, at least in the beginning, is because she was a Gilmore. So it's not really surprising that his parents have continued on with that particular viewpoint about what marriage should be. I thought it was perfect that Lorelai never actually hiked, because that is just what she would do. But then I was confused about how she was gone for 3 weeks, according to Luke. Okay, so my camera died and then I had to leave for work, but I'm back now, so where did I leave off? So yes, Lorelai was gone for 3 weeks, but basically she flew over to the West Coast and packed her bags in a hotel room, and that took 3 weeks somehow. I don't know if that's part of the book experience or something that I'm missing, because I haven't read it or seen it yet. But if you know the answer, let me know. And this next note I have without context, but basically, I love Luke. I'm pretty sure that has to do with the wedding, because my next note is that November 5th is very June 3rd, just the way that she already has it all planned and set and everything. Emily seems happy that Jack is leaving, or if that's even his name, I don't remember. The guy is leaving the Nantucket house. She seems pretty anxious to get rid of him, and I am happy with that, because she does not need a guy. She doesn't need to be dating, and she can be happy alone. I'm glad they found a way to get a scene of Richard in the revival so that he's actually like moving and talking and not just hung in a frame on the wall. I love cussing Emily. It just seems like her in her purest, truest form. Miss Celine! I love Miss Celine. Watching this whole thing back through the second time, I found that that little scene where Rory is on the phone confirming something for 3 o'clock, I originally thought it was for Christopher, but I think that she actually made that appointment to get her pregnancy tested and then went to see Christopher after she found that out, to, yes, let him know about the wedding, but also just to ask him about his thoughts on Lorelai raising a child alone. And as Rincey mentioned in her video, it is totally worth it to at least re-watch that scene, if not the entire fall episode or entire series revival, to see what you may have missed knowing that Rory is pregnant. I also noticed that Rory never drinks the coffee that Christopher gives her, and that's probably because she knows she's pregnant, and caffeine, let alone that much caffeine, is definitely not good for someone who's pregnant. And she also has this little look on her face when she says, "Oh, you got the largest size," like she knows what a waste of coffee it's going to be because she can't drink it. When Lorelai shows up at Emily's house and it's for sale, my first thought was maybe Lorelai will turn the house into an inn. And then I thought the Nantucket house was the same house that Logan offered Rory, and I'm still not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's not the same house, but that was also confusing. And when Lorelai went to the Nun house or whatever that was for sale, I thought that was the Twickenham house. So the housing situation was very confusing for me in this episode. I think the Dean cameo is just perfect. It's exactly what it needs to be. Sweet and short and out. Suki's voice is very different, and I don't know if that's because her voice has naturally changed that way or if she has a cold or something. I haven't really seen her, that actress, in any of her new stuff, but her voice just did not sound like Suki's voice. Finally, Jess with a book. I love how there is a fuzzy picture frame of Rory in Lorelai's house. Boo for Jess saying that he is over Rory, but yay for that look through the window. It gives me life. I did not recognize the Reflecting Light song at the wedding from when it appeared in the original series, but I did go back and watch that scene, and I thought it was really appropriate that it was the same song for Luke and Lorelai's first dance at TJ and Luke's sister's wedding, and I have since fallen completely in love with that song. Scott Patterson definitely got fake hair implants, or the makeup team did that to him or something for the wedding scene, and oh my gosh, it looks awful. It would look so much better if they just left him with his natural hair or let him keep his hat on. I wouldn't care. I was actually pretty surprised about the last 4 words because I never went into any forums and tried to figure out what other people's theories were. I had no idea, and so I was surprised. And in that moment, I thought maybe she would say something like, "Mom, I love you," or "Mom, I'm staying," or something like that. But rewatching it the second time, she definitely looks very troubled before she says that. My first thought after was, that they have to make more now, but I don't know if I want them to. So those are all my thoughts on Gilmore Girls' Year in the Life. I definitely accept it as part of the series, although I think there are parts that they just could have done differently. I think the format of the 90-minute episodes really changes things, and they could have packed a lot more in than they did, such as Jess or Suki or Lane or more Paris. Honestly, Paris rocked. And I've heard where some people thought it was really odd that Paris was still hung up on Tristan, but I kind of totally relate to her, because if I ran into my long-term high school crush, I would probably have the exact same reaction. So that's that, I guess. If you have any other questions, or there's anything that I left out that I didn't remember to include, let me know in the comments. We can continue the discussion, and I want to know what you guys think of it too.